Hello everyone, my name is Hannes, and today I'm going to tell you about making GHCi compatible with multiple home units. This is joint work with Rodrigo and Matthew, and let's just jump right into it. So first things first, what is a home unit? So to put it simply, a home unit is the set of modules that are currently being processed by GHC. So it has all the usual when you have a CLI invocation where you compile a single thing. So for example, if we compile, that's the wrong button, yeah. If we compile if we wanted to compile just this component, then this would be the set of home, or this would be my home unit if I compile only the single one. And the important thing is in GHCi, GHCi can only reload changes for things that are for modules that are part of the home unit. So if I load cabal install as my home unit and change the cabal library, and then I want to reload it, then GHCi will not reload properly. It will just say, okay, I'm just using the old definitions from before. And what we would rather want is we want to have, what we do have is we have support for multiple home units within GHC. So what we say in this case, we load all three of these components into our GHC session, and then we can compile them all at the same time. And the advantage is when we then change, for example, the cabal library, then these changes will be properly propagated to our cabal install component that is not like, yeah. So we can reload changes across multiple home units. And this multiple home units feature is important for the Haskell language server, which is using this heavily to make it possible to load the test suite, library, and executable at the same time into the same session, even multiple projects that are not really related to each other. And as I've just mentioned, also it is very important for GHCi as it improves the productivity of the developer, as we can load all the changes into the same session and we don't have to restart the session all the time when we, for example, change the cabal library. So, but what is the issue with the current GHCi support for multiple home units? The issue is, well, right now it works. If you prompt it correctly, you have to tell cabal exactly, please use the multi-repl thingy. Then everything is great. It reloads everything, it type checks, it reloads on changes. However, when we actually interact with this GHCi session, things are not looking that well. So, for example, if I'm writing this import where I'm trying to import some module from the cabal install component, suddenly I'm greeted with this very informative error message telling me that I've not loaded this package, even though I'm clearly given it as a target, so it should be loaded, right? And moreover, many of the GHCi features, the GHCi commands such as browse, set, and info, just do not work by default in this multi-repl session. So if I try to browse, for example, this module that is in part of the cabal package, then I'm just getting a very dry cabal command not supported. And if I try to use the debugger, for example, which we've already seen a talk about previously, we also can't use the debugger at all. We're simply greeted with, yes, this is not supported. Okay, but why is that the case? So the reason is, if we take a look at just this expression, we need to think about in which context is this expression evaluated in GHCi. And the answer to that is, what is the context? Right now is, or like in any released GHC binary, the context is chosen at random. Very, very fairly. It is obviously not really at random. It is basically some implementation detail that decides what is the current context, which in this case is very hard to understand for the user because they expect importing something like this to work, but suddenly it doesn't. All right, and we want to fix this. So what are we going to fix this? We want to make GHCi we want to make multiple home units a first-class citizen when working with GHCi. And to do that, we have here this home unit graph, the so-called home unit graph, where we have the three dependencies that we want to load. In this case, for example, cabal install, cabal, and cabal syntax. And since we can't decide on what would be the best context, we are just introducing what is the best context for evaluating expressions. And this context is called the interactive GHCi home unit. The interactive GHCi home unit is kind of like a virtual home unit. It does not contain any modules, but it has explicit dependencies on all the home units that you actually want to work with in your GHCi session. In a sense, it serves for anyone that has the. In a sense, it serves the same purpose as the interactive context within GHC, but it is more explicitly modeled and not like and the interactive context is kind of like an implicit home unit, but that we now model explicitly here. This design has a couple of advantages. Firstly, we have one always active on home unit, so it's always very easy to predict what is going to be the context, and it's very much easier to understand for the user to understand what is going to happen, in which context like an expression is going to be evaluated. And we also, as I said, the context was chosen at random. It was not really chosen at random. The thing how we decided what the context is going to be is the last argument from this multi-repl GHCi invocation was going to be used. But now, with this design, it doesn't matter because we decide what the final context is going to be. So these two GHCi invocations, which have just the order of arguments flipped, are going to be equivalent, which is exactly what we want in practice. This design has a problem, and no wait, sorry, that is actually why this is a great design. Because so we have multiple home units first. Each GHCi session will be forever using multiple home units. It will not be there will not be a different case between when you provide a single unit or whether you have 3 home units. So it will be kind of opaque to the end user. That is very nice. In this case, it is very trivial to see how this works. If we only provided 1 home unit, then there would be just a single dependency here. So this, for example, if I just wanted to develop Cabal install, then there would be an interactive GHCi unit that depends on Cabal install, and the rest works as usual. But we can scale it to an arbitrary number of home units. So in this case, 3. It could be 300. It could be the whole of Stackage. And that is very helpful. So that we don't have a special code path. So it's in GHCi, that makes it easier to maintain. Well, as we've seen before, we can import any home module, so like any module that we've loaded for interpretation. So we are not greeted any longer with this error that we've seen before that sometimes, so for example, you can't import something from Cabal install. And luckily, the GHCi commands that have not been working before will behave just naturally, because you can just say browse this module, the module is loaded, okay, you can just browse it. And it is not dependent on the current context. But we have a problem here that I've not talked about yet, and it is about scripts. When we add a module to our current GHCi session, what is going to happen? We have to add it to some home unit because it needs to be it has some dependencies, it has some import paths. We need to add it to one of these home units. But to which home unit should we add it? We don't like blindly want to guess what any of these home units, because that's just like we would have to guess, and it would not be a good user experience. However, we also can't add it to the interactive GHCi context because the GHC prompt should be able to have different compile arguments or like GHC options than the script that we're trying to load. And if they share the same arguments by default, it's a feature that it doesn't work like that, essentially. So what to do about that? Well, when in doubt, let's use more home units. Because this is great. So what we introduce is another home unit, which is only going to be used for adding scripts that are not part of our current GHCi session. This is called the interactive session home unit. Great name, I know. If you have a better idea, please step forward. In any way, this home unit is dedicated for scripts and modules that you want to add to the current context that haven't been loaded before, like that have not been provided as arguments to. They have not been provided as arguments to the CLI invocation. Similarly, this interactive session is very similar to the interactive GHCi session. It is virtual, so it doesn't contain modules by default unless you add something to it. And it also depends implicitly on all the other home units that you've already loaded, primarily because that's the most intuitive. I found it to be the most intuitive behavior. That if you have modules loaded and you add a script, then you expect that this script can find these modules. And the only difference is that the interactive GHCi home unit still is like kind of the super home unit that also depends on the interactive session that allows us to say we can import modules from the interactive session, we can import modules from Cabal install, Cabal, and Cabal syntax. Okay. So, yes, sorry, question.
So With those two home units, just to jump back to the...
That is the wrong button. Sorry.
So when you say, like, set options, F, blah, 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 which one does it apply to?
Okay, the question was when I use the GHCi commands :set, and I provide an argument to which home unit does this apply to. And the answer is to all of them. So if I try to set an option, I would with set, I would apply to all these home units except the interactive one.
And if you use set I?
If you use the command set I, which should only apply apply GHC options to the current prompt, current session, then they will only be applied to the interactive GHCi home unit. In general, it's a great question because that is also like a little not fine-grained enough. So, one sec. Sorry. In the future, which will be future work, we would like to have like more fine-grained control over that and say, okay, I want to change the options only for libcarbol install, but that's future work. Yes, sorry.
What happens to the .ghci file?
What happens to the .ghci file? What should happen?
If I space a multiple unit,
it should. If I recall what happens to the .ghci file? If I recall correctly, this is like you just execute one statement after another within that context of the interactive GHCi home unit, right?
But sometimes I put .ghci in a specific module folder, right? So if you have multiple module specified, what happens?
Okay, I'm afraid I did not. Sorry. Also, sometimes you can put .ghci modules into a specific module.
Yeah, I can put a .ghci file which will...
I did not know that that was possible. So I guess we got to test it. But I can imagine that we can come with some sane semantics. We can come up with some sane semantics. Yes?
You have two units with the same module. And what happens if you try to import that module?
Okay. So what happens if we have, in our home unit graph, we have two modules with the same module name? Also a very good question, obviously. So there are the usual ways to disambiguate such modules, which is, for example, package imports. But if you want to, for example, use the :module command, where then there's currently no way to disambiguate these two module names. Future work.
So you get an error.
You get an error. It tells you this is ambiguous. Sorry. Okay, it does not literally say sorry. but it is handled. But the case is handled. All right. Depending on the time. I would just demonstrate that I'm not just imagining, that I'm not just claiming stuff. I don't know, what is the time? Sufficient.
5 minutes and then 5 minutes for questions.
Okay, that's very easy. So in here, I hope it's not readable at all. Great. So this is like I've set it up. This is just the Cabal code base, and I'm starting a Cabal REPL session. It is set up to use my GHC head. It is set up to use GHC head and the multi-REPL by default, and it uses. Has all the necessary allow newers and some stuff. And when I enter it, this is what we want to behave. This is just doing the usual things. We're just compiling now. We're just opening all three components in our REPL session, which is exactly what we want. And once we finishes, I'm just re-executing all the commands that I was showing you to demonstrate that it does work now. Let's see. No, I have to actually write it. Yeah, okay, so for example, I can import now this module. Awesome, doesn't throw an error. I can use browse. This will hurt a little bit on the eyes. Because, so many things. I can just call it, and I can also use the breakpoints. So in this case, in this work, we also patched the GHCi debugger to work across multiple home units, which is also very nice with Rodrigo's patch. So let's see what I can demonstrate it one last time. No. Yes. Okay. So this I'm setting a breakpoint down here for in distribution.simple for the default main, and now it doesn't crash. Isn't it great? And I'm not going to run it because I don't have it set up properly. But yeah. So
if you wanted to refer to this by file name instead and give source spam, is that you'd have to use the fully qualified path or?
I'm not 100% sure. Sorry, if I wanted to use the full file name, would I have to do what? Sorry, the full path?
Yeah, I mean, how would you refer to this? That module by file name instead.
How would I refer to this module by file name instead of
Given that there are multiple
instead of the module name?
that it might, source roots that it might live in.
Use Rodrigo's debugger. Sorry? Use Rodrigo's debugger.
Use a different debugger is a good response, I suppose. No, I'm not 100% sure how this behaves.
Okay.
Yeah, in this case, I'm just not sure. Like the interaction between file paths and module names actually is very much complicated in GHCi and doesn't work on Windows, for example, at all, or like partially. At least Andreas tested for me and it didn't work.
Is it a theoretical possibility to put the entire dependency graph into the home unit?
Yes, sorry. Is it a possibility to put your entire dependency graph, like everything, into the same REPL session? Yes.
Okay.
So I think Matt previously did experiments where he loaded the whole of Stackage into it.
Okay.
Right?
I attempted.
Attempted, okay.
How much memory do you have?
Oh, less than I tried it.
Okay. Okay. So and just one and is still a working REPL, just proving that. It's not prompted. Okay. So this is just reiterating what we've just seen. All of these features now finally worked, which is exactly what we would like. We can start a multi-REPL session with all the components that we want, and then run all the commands that we want and need. This work has been merged already, and you can use it on GHC Head right now. Future work. We would like to add GHCi commands for home unit graph modifications, so that you, for example, can add new home units during a GHCi session. Currently, this graph is static. You cannot modify it, but it would be cool, maybe, but also complicated. We would like, okay, I want to unify, I want to do code cleanup. I guess it's not that interesting, to be honest, now that I read it. Then it would be very nice to make the interactive context redundant, since it is kind of like an ad hoc home unit. And we already do make some parts of it kind of redundant, but we should take a closer look again and see what else we can salvage and move to a proper home unit so that this code path is less special. And one advantage of that would be that if we make the interactive context redundant, is we can, for example, the seti op commands could modify package flags, for example, because currently you can't do that. You can't modify the dependencies on the prompt, but you could do that because if it's a proper home unit, it has its own set of dependencies. And last but not least, that comes back to that question, what happens if module names are ambiguous? Currently, you don't have any way of disambiguating it, but if there are like multiple module names that are ambiguous, and we would need to think about how we want to fix that. Like we can have, like, for example, make it a user's problem, or we can try to add new GHCi commands or like modify existing ones that you can say, I want to import this module name from this home unit and stuff like that.
So package imports don't work?
Package imports work, but you can't use them when you have, for example, if I tried this module, you can't use package imports in this situation. And for example, if you want to import it with star, I'm not sure. Yeah, awesome. I was scared. But you can't use package imports in this situation. But it works if you use imports. To summarize, this is GHCi sessions will be now multiple home units first. Each and every one GHCi session will use multiple home units. So if there are any bugs, we will finally find them. That's great. We have fixed all the issues that we previously had with multiple home units. We can import any home module independent of order of the GHCi arguments. GHCi commands work, and the debugger also works with multiple home units. And this last things, we have this interactive session home unit is used for loading scripts. That was my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Yes.
Like on slide 12, you still have a flag or enable multi-repl. Is that just a remnant of
So Cabal, So in this example, you can see the enable multi-repl flag here, and in my example, at least in the terminal, you did not see it. So we did not patch Cabal. Cabal still requires to use this enable multi-repl thingy. But in the future, it would be the best. It would be, at least would be the goal to enable the multi-repl unconditionally and up from a certain GHC binary, GHC version, like from the next release, hopefully we could make it the default behavior.
But like currently, if you don't pass that flag, what is the difference? Because you've shown us that as far as GHCi is concerned, there is no such thing as no multi-home.
Yes, so what is the difference if I pass this argument to enable multiple, if I'm not passing this multi-repl? Let's check. I wish I could type. I think that may work, yes. So you...
TI, the TI.
Goodness me. Oh, okay, I guess there's a couple bug. No, it's perfect, exactly. So what happens is this, Cabal tells you you can't use it with multiple components. And by default, it will only launch a GHCi session with a single component in it. That's the default behavior. Does it make sense? Okay, great.
That's what you have. You have it in your global config.
Yes, no, and not global. I have it locally here. Just for demonstration purposes. I don't have that. Okay. Yeah, just like this. But that was just so that the arguments are just not too big. Questions? Yes.
I've had problems with multi-repl, multiple home unit support with custom Cabal build types. Is that?
You had problems with multiple home units, the multi-repl, and the custom setup in Cabal. Yes, not my problem. No. Yeah, I'm afraid it is actually not my problem. But there's,
It still doesn't work.
No, we did not modify Cabal at all. And in this case, the issue with custom setup is with Cabal, right? So this is purely GHCi changes.
We can't work on it, Hannes.
We can't work on it.
We can work on that.
We could work on it, yeah. If you're interested in it, we would be very happy to work on it and improve the situation. Yeah, exactly. Any other questions? Awesome, thank you.